Okay, for my natural hair girlies, for my natural hair folks, do not cut your hair when it's stretched out. Because this morning, my hair was stretched out from a braid out, right? And my bangs were looking a little long, like they were going down to here. I was like, okay, I'll give them a little trim. I put some curl defining gel in that. Look where we are. Look where we are. It's showing way too much forehead. I don't like this. I mean, it's like the baby bang thing, right? Whatever. It's whatever. It's whatever! Hi! It's Kiki, and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. And you might be thinking, it's August. Yes. Okay, can we all agree that we're going to be nice? And we're not going to say anything about this little loop thing, because it doesn't move through the entire video. We're going to pretend like it doesn't exist because we are kind, generous human beings. But I told myself I was going to do this tag when I got halfway through my reading goal of the year. My reading goal this year is 40 books. But here's the thing that never happened. I am, 17 books so far, so I'm not halfway, I'm not at 20 yet, but I just need to get this video out of the way so that I can maybe do some reading vlogs, something. I have 2 weeks until I move out to college, so I'm really trying to get in my reading the next 2 weeks. Maybe I'll make some videos. Maybe you'll never hear from me again. I don't know. It's how it is. We're on a camera this time. I don't remember the last video I posted, but we're on an actual camera this time, so hopefully the quality is showing. You can see my little face. Okay, let's first off take a look at my stats for this year. What's this year? 2022? Like I said before, I've read 17 books, so I'm 70%. I've read 17 books, so I'm 40% through my challenge of 40 books by the end of 2022, which isn't bad. Okay, last year was a really, really rough year for me, so I'm at least trying. I'm at least reading at least one book a month. My top moods are reflective, emotional, and dark, which is up to par with my regular reading taste. Or dark. How many dark? I don't know what dark books I was reading. Oh, literally all the books that are like considered dark are books I read for school. Like classics. Okay, that wasn't by choice. That one wasn't by choice. The reflective and emotional, that was just me being a sad girl. The dark, that was school. I took AP Literature this year, got a 5. Got a 5 on the exam, yeah. Yeah, I did that. But yeah, I read like 6 books for that class. I've read only fiction books so far this year. I did have a goal to read 6 nonfiction books. Will that happen? Remains to be seen. My top genres for this year are LGBTQIA+, young adult, and romance. First things first, LGBTQIA+ is not a genre. Like every year, that is my first one. That's my top genre, but it's not a genre. I'm just reading books of different genres with queer characters in it. So, whatever. Young adult is kind of a genre. It's more just like a target audience, not necessarily a genre either. I'm reading young adult books because I am a young adult. But I feel like the actual genre that I read the most of is romance, literary, and historical, which makes a lot of sense. That's just me. My average rating so far is a 3.89, which is pretty high. That's not bad. That's not bad. That's like majority good. But what surprised me was that I only have 2 5-star reads so far this year, and those were the 2 books that I read at the beginning of the year, which is interesting because I'm usually throwing 5-star ratings around, but this year I don't know if I got more critical. I don't know if I'm just not reading books that are as enjoyable for me, or I don't know what's going on. I've been rating a lot of 0.25s and 0.75s because it doesn't feel right to give, you know, just 1 through 5 score. But yeah. So the first question in this challenge is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2022? And mine is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. Girl, I love this book so much. This was the second book that I read in 2022. Last Night at the Telegraph Club is set in 1950s Chinatown in San Francisco, and this is the book that really propelled my obsession with historical fiction this year. I think I am a historical fiction girly because I love historical fiction so much. One of the reasons why I love this book so much is that they incorporated like little historical nuggets, you know, little symbols of the time period, the 1950s. I was not alive in the 1950s, but Melinda Lowe did a really good job of just like painting the picture of this era and really describing like the emotions and feelings of queer people in this time, which is something like you don't hear a lot about. The whole atmosphere of the book is very, very beautiful because there's like this pageant going on.
Pause. I explained this absolutely terribly. Basically, it's about Lily, who sneaks into this lesbian bar with her little white friend, and they discover themselves. Yeah.
I very much recommend this book. It's a beautiful atmosphere. It's just a beautiful book front to back. I was very engaged with the story. I felt like Melinda Lowe wrote suspense really well. I was on the edge of my seats at some point. Like, I read this on my trip to Atlanta. So I was like in my cousin's house at Atlanta reading this like in my little blanket, like oh my god, what's gonna happen next? The next question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2022. I have not read any sequels. I put down Kiss and Tell by Adib Khorram, which isn't a sequel. It's just another book by one of my favorite authors. Adib Khorram wrote Darius the Great is Not Okay and Darius the Great Deserves Better, which are two of my like all-time favorite books. I love those books so much, and I found out that Adib Khorram had written another novel that came out this year, I believe, and that's Kiss and Tell. It's not related to the Darius the Great series at all. I just put it in sequel because it's like the same author. This book I enjoyed very much. I didn't enjoy it as much as Darius the Great series, but it was still very fun because Adib Khorram is an amazing author. The way he writes nuance and the way he writes like young characters is just like so relatable and so like beautiful. Like you really fall in love with these characters, and it's an incredible experience. Kiss and Tell is about this boy Hunter who is in like a boy band that's like really famous. They're going on tour and he's the only like openly gay member of this boy band, so he feels like he has like this burden on his shoulder that he has to be like the best representation for like the new generation of queer kids, and it's a lot of pressure on him. One thing I really liked about this book, which is why I love Adib Khorram, is that it's from Hunter's point of view, which is who's a white character. And he starts talking to this boy, girl, what's his name? I don't remember his name. Hunter is a part of the boy band. He starts talking to the boy that's the opener for the boy band, and they're like a group of three brothers who are Iranian American. What I'm trying to say is that it explores, you know, racism in a very nuanced way because we're seeing it from, you know, a white character's perspective, but it's written by an Iranian author, so he kind of knows how to write it in a sort of like nuanced and more like sensitive way that makes Hunter a very forgiving character. We kind of get to see the inner workings of his mind and how, you know, it was less overt racism and more like underlying bias. And Adib Khorram is just such a good author that he writes that in such a beautiful way that makes a lot of sense. The next question is a new release that you haven't read but you want to. And my choice is The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonora Reyes. This book seems so interesting. Like, this seems like it would be right down my alley. Catholic school? Lesbians? Yes. So, the only reason I haven't read this book yet is because it's not in my library. The ebook is like $10 and I'm trying to save money or whatever, or at least like read the books that are on my TBR shelf. Like, I don't want to be buying new books until like my TBR shelf isn't literally overflowing. Like, I feel like I should wait, you know? Most anticipated release for the second half of the year in 2022. So this is a book that hasn't come out yet that I'm waiting for, which I had none. I really had to search. But I looked up some of my favorite authors to see if they were coming out with anything later this year. Adiva Jargadar is coming out with another book in October, I think, called A Million to One. I think it's set on the Titanic or something. It doesn't seem like something I would regularly read because it's like a heist book, but it's Adiva Jargadar, so I'm gonna read it. Like, why would I not read it? And if it's set in the Titanic, that makes it historical fiction. Stay with me here. I love historical fiction. I love Adiva Jargadar. I'm gonna love A Million to One. Makes sense. Another one is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. Comes out in December, I think. I don't know what it's about. I have no idea what it's about, but Celeste Ng wrote it, and I've been waiting for a new Celeste Ng book, so give me whatever. Adiba Jargadar is the author who wrote The Henna Wars and Hani and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating, which are two of my favorite books, like, ever. I love them so much. And then Celeste Ng wrote Little Fires Everywhere and Everything I Never Told You, which are both books that I gave 5 and 4 stars. Beautiful, amazing. So I'm very much looking forward to more from them. The biggest disappointment of 2022. This is the book that I gave the lowest rating, which was a 2.75 stars, which isn't that low, but I really was not liking this book at the end, and that is The Chosen and the Beautiful by... That's my fault. That is my fault for not looking up this author's name before I started recording. And that was The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevoy. Let me explain what this book is about first, before I get into it. So The Chosen and the Beautiful is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, except it's from Jordan's perspective, and she is Asian American and queer. Basically, there's some magic sprinkled in there. There's a bug in my room. This was the biggest disappointment, but it did not start out all bad. You know, I was liking it in the beginning. I was very interested. It's just the book was too long and it just got really boring. My camera stopped recording. Okay. It's basically a fan fiction. Like, not basically, it is a fan fiction of The Great Gatsby. And I am very well versed in fan fiction. I have read many a fan fiction in my day. This is not one of the good ones. There's many fan fiction I have read that I think should be published. Did I think this shouldn't have been published? No. I think it just needed more editing. We needed so much more elaboration on the magic system. Jordan, as the main character, was a very dull... She was very charming. I thought the dialogue was very interesting. It's just that I read The Great Gatsby for school earlier this year, and I loved it so much just because I love F. Scott Fitzgerald. I gave The Great Gatsby 3.5 stars, so why did I dock so many stars off? I'm absolutely obsessed with F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing, so that's what makes a retelling of this story so difficult, because, you know, Nevo isn't F. Scott Fitzgerald. Her writing is never going to sound like F. Scott Fitzgerald. I can't expect that. But Jordan in The Great Gatsby was so interesting. She was a supporting character. She had a very pretty small role. But I wrote in my review, Jordan was that gal. Like, I loved her. In terms of The Great Gatsby retelling, sometimes it would retell very specific scenes and it would kind of just reword them. And it's like, I would rather just read The Great Gatsby if you're just going to reword exact scenes from the original novel. Like, I don't know, give it a little spice, bring something to the table. Like, it's from Jordan's point of view. Why is she identifying the same things that Nick identified in The Great Gatsby? Nick was the narrator in The Great Gatsby, and he noticed XYZ. Jordan should notice ABC, right? Like, she would notice different things in the same setting at the same party. So it's like, why is Jordan also noticing the exact things that Nick noticed? It doesn't really make sense for her character. And then again, her as a character, she lost the edge. She really had no direction in life. I didn't understand her goals. I didn't understand what she wanted. And then the book wasn't even that gay. Like, we mostly got a lot of her relationship with Nick, which is like very interesting. I liked their relationship a lot. It was very, you know, but I don't know, I would have liked more, right? Like, we could have done more. Nebo needed another editor. And then next is The Biggest Surprise. So a book that I was surprised by how much I liked it. That was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I read this one for school, and The Picture of Dorian Gray is definitely now my favorite book I've ever read for school. Probably my favorite classic. It is such a good book. Like, wait, I actually have a physical copy of this one because I bought my own. This book is so good. I rated this 4.5 stars. So it was my biggest surprise, but it wasn't perfect. There were still a few things about this book I didn't like. It was written in 1891, so there was some like problematic, racist kind of sentiments there. There was some like pacing issues. There's literally one chapter in this book that is the most boring chapter I've ever read in any novel, anywhere, ever. I think that chapter is like 16 pages long. It is so unnecessary. It's just so dramatic. I was absolutely in love with the story. It had me gripped from page 1. I needed to know what was gonna happen next. Like, I needed to know like details. It was so good. It had me interested, keep me a 21st century girl interested in 19th century shenanigans. I knew that Oscar Wilde was gay. I knew that this book was a little queer, you know? But I wasn't expecting it to be like that gay. Like, there is an openly gay character. It's not like he really says it, but you can't deny it. When I tell you Oscar Wilde writes suspense amazingly, he writes suspense amazingly. Because it's like, I felt like the stakes were so high, even though the stakes really weren't that high, but like, I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Like, oh. And let me tell you, the ending of this book is so good. It is so satisfying. Like, it has to be the most satisfying ending to any book, like, ever. So that's why I forgive it for those dull 16 pages. I forgive Oscar for those. Because right after that was like the most interesting scene. I was gasping. It was so good. And then the actual ending of the novel is so freaking good. Like, it's so freaking good. I love this so much. This is one of those books where it's like, I would love a movie adaptation, but I need the movie adaptation to be my movie adaptation, because nobody loves this book the way I love this book. The way I interpret it, right, is like different. So, and this is the first book that I started, I don't know if you can see, I started like marking it up. I would be highlighting quotes in the book because the writing is so beautiful, and there's a lot of dialogue between the characters that is just very, very interesting. If you're in the market for a classic to read The Picture of Dorian Gray. It's short enough. It is very, very interesting, very dramatic, very Okay, I say funny because I find drama funny, but very entertaining. The next question is my new favorite author. I chose Banana Yoshimoto for this question because I read NP this year, which wasn't the first book that I read from Banana Yoshimoto. I read Kitchen last year and I loved it. I loved it so much. And so this year I read NP. It took me I did start reading this book last year and I didn't finish it until a few months ago, just because I got busy with other stuff. But once I got into this novel, it is so good. And you can tell it's from Banana Yoshimoto's writing. Like, her writing is so spectacular, and you know, it's just like the way she perceives life and the way she writes about life and like mortality is so like fascinating and like inspirational in a way that it makes me feel like, you know, happy in my life. It makes me glad to be human, you know, and that's an amazing thing as an author. NP really cemented that, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite authors of all time and I need to read her entire discography. Is it called a discography for authors, or is that just music? I would love to read all of her work. Newest fictional crush. Now, I always have a hard time with this question. I don't know why. I feel like I don't be crushing on like book characters like that. Joe and Nathan from The Downstairs Girl by Stacey Lee. The Downstairs Girl is so good. Like it's so good. That's a historical fiction set in the 1860s, 1890s. I think it's the 1890s in Atlanta. Oh, it's so interesting. In terms of this question, I put Joe and Nathan, two characters in the book, because oh, they're so good. Joe is the protagonist, and she is a Renaissance girl. She can do anything. Like, I love her so much. She is talented at everything. She is that girl, right? She's such a good writer, and she's such a good hat maker, and she's such a good, you know, speaker. Like, I love her. She's my girl. Other one is Nathan, who from the first page he showed up, I said, oh, this is the guy. Okay. I was gripped. And as we got further into the novel, I started loving him more. Of course. Obviously. Oh, I love him. And I love how the book says that he's like unattractive. It says that he's not conventionally attractive, but I don't care what he looks like. Nathan, yeah. The next question is newest favorite character, and for me, that is Lily. In the last graph. Look at this graph. Last night at the Telegraph Club, because the reason I love that book so much is mainly because of the protagonist Lily. She is such a beautiful voice. She's such a beautiful character to follow. She's so sweet and she's so kind, and she's really just like discovering herself. And as she's discovering herself, like, me as the reader, I just like fall more in love with her. She's amazing. She grows so much, and you know, I really like sympathize with her and her struggles throughout the story. My other favorite character is Basil in The Picture of Dorian Gray. I love Basil. He is so sweet. All he ever wants to do is help Dorian. Like, literally, all he ever wanted was to help Dorian. All he ever wanted was to help. To be a nice guy. It's whatever. Basil is my guy. Basil is my dude. The reason why I felt like I had to put Basil here is because I found my least favorite character ever. Like, I hate him with a vengeance, and that is Lord Henry in The Picture of Dorian Gray. Don't come near me. Don't come near me. I hate Lord Henry so much. Like, I have never hated a character so much. He talks so much. He is always in other people's business. He gives terrible, 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 terrible advice. And that's how you know Oscar Wilde is a good author, because I hated that character so much, but I kept reading that book. I still love that book. Yeah. The opposite of Lord Henry is Basil, and he is my baby. The next question is a book that made you cry. I cried. I almost cried. I was tearing up at the end of 7 Days of June by Tia Williams. I finished this book yesterday. So that was the latest book that I finished. And I cried, but not in like a good way. You know, I cried not in a way that like, oh, I just got so wrapped up in the story that I started crying. Like, I cried because I was angry. I cried because I was sad, but like, it's a whole thing. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil what happens in the book, but there's something that really, really, really made me mad. That book was very, very good. It's a romance novel about this author like reuniting with this man that she used to be in a relationship with back in the day, back in her teen years. And that's like showing what it was like in their childhood, and then showing them again in the present, and how, you know, the past still like affects them, how the past still like follows them in ways that they've changed and grown over the years and stuff. So I really like that. I really loved the romance. Very interesting, very funny, very sad, very, you know, heartfelt. But then something happened. The third act conflict, if you read a lot of romance, you know what the third act conflict is, was terrible. Was terrible. That is normally what ruins a romance for me. It's like, it's hard to write a third act conflict, I can admit that, but something like major happens for the third act conflict, and then the ending is like super rushed, so like we literally gloss over it, and I was crying at the thing that happened, and then I turned the page and we already moved on. Like, I didn't even have a chance to cry before, boom, the ending of the novel was here and we're wrapping everything up. It was very jarring. I docked an entire star off for it. But yes, it made me cry because it was a sad thing that happened. And then we just like pretended that it never happened. Next is a book that made you happy. The Downstairs Girl by Stacey Lee. Read it. It's so good. It's like that. It has all the things I love about historical fiction. My camera's losing battery. I have to go fast. Most beautiful book you bought this year. I didn't buy many books this year. The ones I did didn't really have pretty covers. I'm choosing 2 mangas for this one. I don't include mangas in my reading goals. Like, I don't log them in the story graph, which is kind of weird. I should start doing that. But that's Banana Fish. I only have the second volume because that was the only one that was in store. Let me show you a picture of the first volume, because that is a cover that I am obsessed with. It's so beautiful. I love it, I love it, I love it. I love Banana Fish. The manga was written in the 80s, so it shows. It definitely shows. It's a little dated. Akemi Yoshida, literally amazing. Has to be one of the best shoujo mangakas of all time. She's groundbreaking. The other one is Boys Run the Riot by Keito Gaku. I love this book so much. I only have the first volume, but I think there's 4 total volumes in this series. It's about a trans boy in high school starting a fashion brand. Like, it's amazing, and oh, it's just so beautiful. I love this manga. And look, I love all the covers in the entire series, but yeah, that's beautiful. It's so pretty. And then the last question, we finally made it, people, before my camera's about to die, is books you really need to read by the end of this year. I need to read nonfiction. I haven't read any. I have 2 Angela Davis books on my shelf just waiting to be read. I have Bell Hooks. I have a few more nonfiction on this shelf that I really need to read. I started reading Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. last year I just never finished it, which I need to do. I only had like 50 pages left. But my library loan expired, and then my library ran out of the book. Like, it was on Libby, and like my library subscription or whatever, like my library's, you know, like purchase of the ebook expired. So now I literally can't rent it from the library anymore. So it's like, I'm just figuring out when I can finish that book. Right now, I'm reading Maurice by E.M. Forrester. It's incredible, actually. It's incredible. I'm gonna stop filming this video and continue reading this because I love it, love it, love it very much. Oh, You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. That's the book that I have on my, that I have checked out at the library right now. I haven't started reading it yet. I very much do want to finish it soon. I have like 9 days before it expires, so I need to get on that. But I'm very excited to read that book. I hear it's very good. I hear it's very dramatic, which I love. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you will consider my book recommendations. I hope you have an amazing day, an amazing summer, and an amazing rest of 2022. Here's to making our book goals, because I'm gonna do it. I'm telling you. You say you've only read 17 books. How are you gonna read 40 books by the end of the year? I'm gonna do it. Okay? Don't try me. I'm gonna do it. Because who got a 5 on their AP Lit exam? So I can do anything. Bye!